Welcome to the podcast Above the Cloud, Stories from the Boardroom. In every episode, we interview business leaders who are navigating the complex world of B2B marketing. Whether you're trying to grow revenue, swoop into a new market, or launch new products, we promise you've landed in the right spot. And now your host, Richard Byrd.
All right, today we have a great show. We have Dustin Williamson on the podcast today, and he is the Managing Director at vcfo. Welcome to the show, Dustin.
Hi, Richard. Thank you for having me on. This is a great honor.
Well, I'm glad to have you on the show. We've known each other for a little while now, and you always have the most interesting, fun stories about your path, and I thought you'd be a good fit for the show.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited about coming on today.
You may or may not know, but we have a tradition here on the Above the Clouds podcast where we ask our guests if their company was a bird, what kind of bird would it be?
Well, fortunately, I had the ability to maybe watch a prior podcast or two, but I wouldn't pick a bird as an avian species. You didn't really define that, but I did pick a bird as far as I think maybe a long-lost relative of yours, the admiral bird of Antarctica exploration after World War II. That's a fascinating story. I think it's called Operation High Jump. The U.S. sent the admiral down there to explore and map and discover what was beneath the ice over there. So
yeah,
very fascinating.
That is a relative of mine, and I actually have some of the transcripts from the Telegraph transcripts from back in the day for early HD. He got carbon monoxide poisoning and almost died down there. And
wow, like from a heater or what? Yeah,
there was a heater, and everything was sealed up. And one of the heaters was producing carbon monoxide, and he passed out from it. This may have become inrescient. So it was a really, really interesting story. You know, that's I never met him and don't know anybody who knew him. But yeah, he's one of our relatives from Virginia back in the day. Yeah.
Fascinating guy, fascinating story. I don't know if anybody is ever interested in that. There's a lot of really cool stuff that comes out periodically about, what's in Antarctica and what was there. And it was almost like a little icy Indiana Jones type story. So really
yeah.
So that's the bird I would pick.
All right. Well, I'm honored. I'm honored you chose a distant relative of mine. So just walk us through your career and tell us how you got here to where you're at today.
You want the long version or the short version?
Hey, this is long format content, baby. Yeah. Let's go deep.
Awesome. Well, I grew up in a small town in West Texas. I had decided at an early age that I was not going to be a CPA or an accountant because my father, like before that, he was a partner in a CPA firm there locally in Vernon, Texas. And I was determined. And so when I came out of high school, I went directly to Baylor. And I thought the world dropped off at the Texas state line. Had no idea what was out there in the world. And I went through Baylor. I came out with international business and accounting degrees, and was getting recruited by Arthur Andersen. And at the time, Arthur Andersen was that was the place to be. If you were an accounting major, that was number one, at least in Texas.
Oh yeah,
every city's a little different, but Texas markets and a lot of the other markets around the nation or world was Arthur Andersen was number one or number two. And so they said, so what do you want to do? I was like, audit or tax? And I was like, well, international tax. That's what I want to do. If you understand international, you have to understand all the rest.
Sure.
But if you start at the bottom and state and local stuff, you don't have to understand federal or international. So if you start at the top of the pyramid, then you can start looking at the other pyramids. So they pull me in the office and say, hey, what do you think about Brussels, Belgium? I was like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And then, and so I just kept nodding my head and said, let's go. And that night I went home and found a globe and figured out where the hell I just signed up to go. I had no idea. And I just knew it was international and overseas and somewhere in Europe. My girlfriend at the time had just moved to Dallas to follow me from TCU.
Oh, so,
And I said, well, what do you think about Brussels, Belgium? And she's like, I don't think anything about Brussels, Belgium until I get a better commitment out of you. So, you need to step up, buddy. And so next thing you know, I'm engaged, and I head over to Belgium, and so then that's where I really got into international tax, as far as from inbound, outbound international tax consulting, but also got into transfer pricing. And transfer pricing, it's a really unique tool that I didn't quite understand when I was getting into it, but I was kind of like, a lot of times I'm just like, let's go in a direction.
Yeah,
and,
let's learn.
Yeah, let's learn this. And so I had that 3-year assignment, just so happened to coincide with when Arthur Andersen was blowing up with Enron and WorldCom. And so a lot of the offices in the world got, in the U.S., they got just liquidated. People just scattered. Nobody wanted that liability at the time. But in the outside the U.S., all the other big five or big five at the time were snapping them up. At that time, it was more of the choice of, do you re-sign with Deloitte or do you go back to your home office, which basically was a choice to be laid off. So I was like, well, you send me to Glendale, Arizona, because I had been fortunately planning about it, and they didn't have to worry about 80,000 accountants in the market at the same time. And so went back to grad school, decided I was going to be a venture capitalist, and was there at Thunderbird for 2 years, and I worked for the Wasatch Venture Fund, and which is now called Epic Ventures. And that was a great experience. And from there, I went to work for a family-held fund. It was a private equity fund there in Phoenix. And that was a great experience as well. The family-held fund invested in, all different types of assets. We weren't like a regular private equity fund might be looking at, particular groups, particular profile. We were doing everything from Lloyd's of London to private equity investments, lead VC or alongside VC investments. Typically, we wouldn't lead a deal unless it was a small, like, angel deal. We ran the Arizona Angels Fund. I mean, it was a lot of different types of investments, even international stuff. And so one of the deals I was looking at was a mortgage-backed security fund. This was in 2005. And they would come to me and say, hey, we're looking for funding. We're trying to get, mortgages for gringos and buying property in Mexico and on Mexican property, but, the borrowers were American or Canadian. And the family had that's how a lot of the original wealth was created, was through the banking industry, and through actually the patriarch of the family. He had come up with novel things outside of mortgages, like, for example, a second mortgage or a home equity line of credit. So back in the 80s. And so anyway, kept saying, no, this is too big of an investment. You need hundreds of millions of dollars. We're not in that mode. And so the fourth time they came back and said, well, we're no longer looking for money. We got funded by a German investment bank. We're looking for you. And like, are you interested in going to Austin to set up the investment bank's operations? And so it was for Deutsche Structured Finance. And that's what really got me back in Austin, closer to family. So I worked for the German investment bank. We did all kinds of deals with the mortgage-backed security fund. As soon as I got there, the bank and the people that brought me in got in a huge fight.
Oh no!
So it was supposedly already structured. I was just supposed to be there to set up the entities and do the next deals. And holy smokes, they got just white knuckle, hands around each other's throats, fight right in the middle of it.
Oh no!
And so I kind of ended up being and it actually ended up being pretty fortunate. So I was doing that plus finding new deals, and structured finance is very different from investment banking. Like, let's say that you're an average investment banker might be, listing other companies and going out and talking with business owners and things of that nature. This role was very different. Like, it was, we were taking U.S. debt and then German equity, and taking the U.S. debt from, like, let's say Prudential or some of the life insurers or like GE Capital, things of that nature, where it was pretty cheap debt. My job was to go find like the people that would operate the fund. So like, let's say multifamily, like rehabilitation companies, or commercial real estate, or they did most of the aircraft out of Germany, but wind and solar deals, find the operators, find the builders, go put it together, structure it. But we would structure it a little differently. And my job was to help sell them on, hey, we're bringing in German equity, but we need to make this look a certain way. So it's going to cluck like a chicken and walk like a duck, so it's, and you're still going to get your bird, but we need to make it look for, using the double tax treaties, we need to make it look like they are engaged in the U.S. trader business. And so engaged in the U.S. trader business, that's where my tax background came into play. Engaging them in the U.S. trader business meant paying like the lowest rates. Like if they didn't have these investors didn't have substantial assets held in the U.S. that are kicking off cash, that they're paying taxes at 10% versus maybe 40, 50% on the same investment. Like it's really critical to understand, like if you're going outbound taxation, you're taxed on your worldwide income. And so, but Germans are territorial. They're not taxed on their worldwide income. They're taxed on their German income only. So the fortunate part about them getting in a huge fight whenever I arrived, which meant that I was the mediator. I was kind of like, guys, you just hired me to like do this thing, and you're all pissed at each other. I'm like, how do I get the Germans and the American side to like really get along? Because they were the ones that recruited me over there, were the ones that were putting together the fund and underwriting the mortgages. And so the Germans were just bringing in the equity and the debt to fund the mortgages. But they needed it to look a certain way. And so it drug on for almost the entire, at least half the time, if not 3/4 of the time, that I was doing other deals, like just me pushing it along in a time I was thinking, and this goes back to like maybe career-wise, sometimes the worst thing in the world, and I was just talking to somebody about this, I'll tell you about Arthur Andersen in a second, but the worst thing in the world seems it might happen to you could actually be the best. And so like they're fighting over these mortgages and I'm fretting about it and like thinking, oh man, it's like, how the hell do you explain this to someone? Like how bad they're fighting, and like I'm right in the middle of it and I'm the mediator. This can't be good. Well, it took so long that by the time the mortgage industry blew up, they only had like 10, maybe 15 million of mortgage funding outstanding. If they had done it whenever I'd shown up, they would be several hundred million deep.
Wow.
Like that would have taken a huge hit on that bank. And not only that, but everybody else around it.
Yeah. Seek it. Procrastination pays off.
Yeah. Well, no, and here's another story. I mean, like, so like I was just talking to a friend of mine's, a Weiss, that I think you kind of run in the same circles with here in Houston. And we were talking about the story of Arthur Andersen and Andersen Consulting. How, and this is a great branding case study. Like Andersen Partners, or Arthur Andersen created Andersen Consulting, but Arthur Andersen was growing at tax was maybe at 10+%, and audit was maybe 5% growth year over year. They created Andersen Consulting, and it's growing 20-30% every year. That's where all the money was coming in. And so these partners with Andersen Consulting didn't like, eventually, as it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and tax and audit were no longer the lead, Andersen Consulting was generating the lion's share of the profit. Well, they all get in a big fight, and they're fighting over the Andersen name, Andersen Consulting, where it's Arthur Andersen, but you think that it's the worst thing in the world. Like I remember they cut off the floors at Arthur Andersen, like between Arthur Andersen and Andersen Consulting. We couldn't, like I was in Dallas at the 55th floor, and like they had 4 or 5 floors, and they had a stairway between them, and they just walled it off. Like they were fighting, and it was really pretty serious a fight over that name. So they lose the rights to the name as they spin off, and they were really upset. And then 1 year later, The Anderson company blows up. At the same time, one of the things that was at the time where you thought, that was the end of the world for Anderson Consulting, and they turned into,
Sure.
they took on the name Accenture, and
Yeah.
6 months to a year later, turns out Arthur Anderson's name was trashed, and so it gave them the bridge. They were able to navigate the waters without serendipitously, and so what?
Just like they drew it up.
Right, they couldn't have planned it any better without planning a thing about it. They were forced into it. They're kicking and screaming, and turned out that was the best move they ever made.
I remember when all that went down, and I was working at a branding firm when that happened, and I remember we were going, why would you lose that awesome name? Like, they're losing all that brand equity, and they made up the stupid name that didn't mean anything. And so we were, in the peanut gallery going, what the heck are they doing over there? And so then I read later the case studies of how it all went down. And of course, the branding firm that I worked on it was like, yeah, look at this brilliant thing we planned out. It was good to hear what really happened on the inside.
Yeah. It certainly was an eye opener. So sometimes I guess the critical thing to think about over, as I look back over my career, and that's why I kind of don't get too wrapped around the axle anymore about, deadlines are certainly important. There are things that are important, but sometimes the thing that you think is the most important is not necessarily ends up being the most important. I think the most important is the people moving in the right direction, but getting fixated on the brand itself, especially one that's dependent on somebody else, or getting too fixated on the objective to the point where you think it's the end of the world if you don't meet it. Sometimes that it does work out. It doesn't work out well. And then I've had other instances where where M&A deals didn't work out, and then you look back in hindsight and go like, whoa, we dodged the bullet on that one. I'm glad I didn't acquire that. It's certainly it takes a little bit lighter view of whenever I was a young guy in investment banking, and everything was serious and everything had to be done in an exact way, and everything was end all be all type, black or white type, goal accomplishment. And so I'm a lot more relaxed about it now.
Yeah. I know that, like, whenever you're young, you start your career, you think it's going to be this long, flat stretch of road, that's straight, like the ones you grew up in West Texas. And they're actually pretty windy and hilly, and there's ups and downs and, obstacles in the road and all these things that you can never plan for.
Right. Yeah. So certainly I'm pretty much, what this does is it lends itself, like the way that I kind of hop through my career, going from international tax to VC to family held funds / private equity to investment banking. And then I ended up, when the economy blew up in 2009, 2010, all the Germans went back to Germany. I was like, the hell am I going to do? So I thought at the time that I would do busted wind deals, busted solar deals. And I knew enough people in the industry. I had the know-how, and knew how the structures worked. I wanted to do workouts and turnarounds in that area. And 6 months of that, me trying to cracking into the industry, and these were $100 million deals. It's just me. And so I was kind of more like Don Quixote, like out there, chasing the windmills down. But what turned out happening, and like what ended up happening was, in the 80s, I found out, if you start looking in the history books, especially here in Houston, the banking industry went through a turnaround in the real estate space, And when they were doing that, the developers, like whenever things got really tight, they just sent the keys back. And so they called it jingle mail. And so jingle mail was what the banks received every day. They got a bag full of mail, and the reason it jingled is because the keys were in it.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty much what happened. And when I was in investment banking, I was the largest client of this law firm there in Austin, especially because of that. When everybody was fighting in the lawsuits and stuff like that, it started up on a mortgage-backed security fund. And I went and sat down with the managing partner there, and was licking my wounds and telling him, like, how I just wasted 6 months and trying to do turnarounds in the wind and solar space. And he's like, well, you've got your CVA. I had a valuation analyst credential, and your CPA is like, I've got tons of valuation work for estate planning. It's like, you want to do that? Because that pays money. And I was like, well, that pays a lot more than what I was doing. So let's give it a go. And so I ended up being one of the, probably, if not the largest, but at least the second largest valuation firm in Austin, Texas at the time, which valuation industry was really just in its infancy. And so I did that. And then I started getting into fractional CFO type roles, and then also doing M&A and fundraising and things like that. That were a lot more exciting. That was a lot more conducive to my background. But valuation really bridged that gap, and that's another important lesson. There are things in vogue at certain times, and if you don't have the skill sets to be able to only do the things in vogue. So, like, for example, if you're only an M&A guy or only a private equity guy or only a VC guy, there are times when that's not in favor at all. And you're going to be out of luck. And so having a broad, diverse skill set is like one of the things that, has really helped me along the way. And so there are things like turnarounds and valuation and things like that do well when the economy's down and nobody's funding anything.
Yeah, sure.
And so I did that for a while, and then I started doing turnarounds and sales, and did some a couple of energy companies turnarounds, and then one in particular sold one to I was the CFO there, and sold it to a strategic buyer, and that worked really well. And then went out to Midland to try to do the same thing around 2017, 18. And that was not working as well because we did it during COVID, 2 turnarounds. And man, Midland is a special place. So I didn't end up selling it. Got it turned around twice, but I didn't feel like it's sellable. So I called up vcfo and was like, so what are you guys doing? I think I want to come back to Austin. And next thing you know, they're looking for a managing director in Houston that I didn't know about. And so they're like, well, what do you think about Houston, Texas? And I was like, oh no. All my in-laws are in Texas. I'm not going back to Houston or in Houston, Texas. And I was like, the famous last words were, but I'll ask my wife. And next thing you know, we're going to Houston, Texas.
Yeah. He's like, hell yeah, I could be back with my family. Yeah. So we can gang up on you.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's actually been a really great experience. And I kind of regret avoiding Houston for 25 years, but here we are. And, I do enjoy Houston and getting to know the market, how deep the breadth of it is, and then how open people are here. And so it's a great place to do business. So.
Yeah, it's super business friendly place. Well, one of the things that I really like about your story is you're telling all these stories, and you got these little building blocks of skill, and you picked them up at each place, and then created this really great, wall for your career. It made you free, capable, and you got a lot of experience on a lot of weird niche things that when you put them all together, it's like really helpful for companies.
Yeah. So I've got, I mean, the CFO experience, but like the tax and the private equity and the VC and a lot of that's really helpful in what I do. But it's almost like, you know, that it's a 1964 movie, the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, where,
Yeah.
you know, Rudolph and Cornelius stumble upon the land of the misfit toys. So,
Yeah, that's right.
I'm more like the from the land of the misfit finance guys. Like, I don't fit any boxes really, but I've checked them all, I think, at some point.
That's cool. Well, I can imagine that when you're going to be a fractional CFO, that really helps because I can imagine you get thrown a lot of different things your way.
Right.
Yeah.
So vcfo is we do fractional CFOs, controllers, high-end HR people, and so when we're approaching the lower middle market, so about 10 million to about 150 million in revenue. There's all different types of situations, from turnarounds to high growth to family transitions, where you're transitioning from one patriarch of a family to the next generation down. There's a lot of different areas that we assist in, but my background, and I'm the managing director of Houston, so I'm mostly doing all of the business development and relating with, our partners, relating with the CEOs, relating with like basically everything that's not involved with doing the actual work. So I get to go and talk about everybody's problems and tell you about like how we solved them, and I get to diagnose the problem. But when it comes to fixing them, we have some excellent CFOs and controllers that actually go in and fix them now. So.
Yeah. Well, so there goes another skill when you're in your skill set, business development and sales. And I think one of the things that we do a lot here is we talk to people at sales and marketing. It's been the focus of this podcast. And it's surprising how many people wind up in a business development role or a sales role or even a marketing role, and they never wanted to go into that. It's like they wanted to be an engineer or a finance person or a doctor. And then the next thing they know, they find themselves in a BD role. How do you like that?
Well, I love it, but it was a hard transition, for being a CFO and talking about different, technical problems, and shifting into being able to relate to people on a very foundational level, and not getting too deep into the weeds, and being able to read people and understand that their problems, even though they think they're technical, they are very much soft touch and even cultural. And so being able to see that from a mile off, and like, for example, I remember the first deal that I walked into for me being a managing director of vcfo, and it's more of an important lesson I learned very fast, was I go in and I speak, like I'm sitting down with the CEO, and I was like, "Hey, Mr. CEO, what's keeping you up at night? What seems to be going on?" And he kind of looks around, and then he like goes up, quietly shuts his door, and sits down at like this office. And the office, by the way, is like, because I worked for the Germans, I knew like a lot about furniture. It's all like Herman Miller and Eames, but like original stuff, the shag carpet. Like, so this is like the fourth generation there. And so I was like, man, I was floored. I was like, man, this is all original. Like, this is the coolest office I've ever been into. And so he shuts the door and he looks at me like straight in the eye, and he's like, "It's that guy down the hall. It's that dirty bastard. I cannot stand him. I need him out. I need a new CFO tomorrow." And I was like, "Well, we can help you." And so it's a really
You're like,
important...
selling's easy.
I was like, well, this is easy. And then I completely should have paused, said, well, tell me more about this relationship with your CFO. And what do you think the, like more of Socratic method of like getting to the more of an answer? Because, at the time, I viewed it as a one-way street, in that, you could fit anybody into a box and get them to operate. And it was a very singular way of looking at things. And so as going to the sales process, you need to do a lot of discovery. And sometimes there is no amount of plugging someone in that will fix that problem.
Right.
And so we found that out. And we actually, did an interim CFO. And within 6 months of recruiting and finding another CFO, that CFO was out of there. Like, he's like, threw his hands up and said, I can't handle this. And so we're back in the place. And that's when I have to have the conversations with some of them and saying, hey, look, there's no amount of what we can do that will fix your problem. The problem really originates at the top. And we need to talk about like maybe getting some HR help or even some coaching involved, but being able to do some problem conflict resolution. And then the way that I pitch it to them is it's almost automatically whenever I go in and I see like a silo within a company, and like especially when that's the chief complaint of the CEO, like it's a silo. Like my finance department can't get any information out of them, and I can stop and say, hey, I need to ask more questions about this, but do you have someone that's that really gets after them, like really, like whenever somebody screws up, you point the finger, and I start like asking questions in that direction, because the thing I found is that people take years trying to get rid of silos, and you can fix it almost in just a couple months flat. And it's when you find, detect, and solve a blame culture where you have somebody at the top. It don't always have to be the CEO, but somebody is out there and creating an environment that is threatening to everybody else, and they get very insular. So as soon as you find that and fix it, then you can do everything else. So, there's a lot of important lessons that I didn't know as a CFO that like now it's like, oh man, you can tell me like 3 or 4, you can tell me 2 or 3 phases and I'm like digging into a completely different direction than a normal CFO would do. So.
For sure. Yeah. When he told you, hey, I hate that guy down the hall, but our finance guy, he's probably making them do like things like, file taxes appropriately or just do their job to keep him out of jail, right?
Yeah. Well, like it's the thing about like, especially like as companies grow, they might have somebody in place that's been there for 20 years and they call them the controller or the CFO. And the thing is, they're just the person that knows the system the best. And they do really well in the box thinking, and they do really well with debits and credits, and that's all needed. They do really well with filing things timely. Well, usually it's not always timely, but like they do well in the box. But as soon as that owner starts graduating up into size and having needs that are outside of the business, normal business operations, and they say, well, you're my finance guy or woman or whatever, you're my accounting person. Why can't you do these things? Like, do bank refinances or what if scenarios and cash projections and boardroom reports. And they fall on their face every time. And that's where the animosity starts. It's like they don't quite understand what a CFO does and the mindset of a CFO being able to get outside the box and operate without much direction. Whereas the type of person that they have in that role needs direction, needs a box, and only knows the box. And so it's a really hard, once you kind of go through that concept, it's easier for the CEO to recognize, hey, maybe I just need to supplement my team with somebody that can do this. But that's not always the easiest thing for them to see on their own. So.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that is something we see a lot when we're working with companies and working with the executive leadership team, is you can really tell a controller that is being asked to do CFO things. And it is really a fish out of water, especially when they're going through something really hairy like a M&A work, or they're going to, they're acquiring somebody, or they're trying to sell the business to somebody. Well, that person who makes sure your taxes get filed and that everything's in the right GL code can really get out of their depths very quickly in those situations.
Yeah, we see all types. And that's the thing that vcfo, the value proposition that we bring in, is that we have all different types of personalities with all different types of experience. And sometimes the trump card on getting the right person isn't necessarily has in-depth experience in the industry. It's the one that can deal with the CEO the best or the situation the best. And I give you an example. We do a lot of the PI index testing for our CFOs, or basically everybody comes in the door. And there's a particular one that I do really well with. It's called the Maverick type personality, and they kind of shoot from the hip and ask questions later. Like those are the
by the way, I'm a Maverick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we should get along really well.
Yeah. Exactly. I know. I took that, and I was like, I took the PI, and we like Berkman here, but I took PL from a friend of mine who's a consultant, that PI consultant that, and I was like, I'm a little insulted by that. And I was like, wait, I can't be that. And I was asked my wife about it. And so we're reading down the list of stuff, and she's like, yeah, you don't know you do that? That's totally you. Oh, man, that is you all the way. What are you talking about? I was like, oh, well, I guess I am a Maverick.
Yeah. And the thing I've learned is Mavericks, you don't put Mavericks together. Like, never put a Maverick together. You got to put some other personality to, they'll butt heads. So like, I do really well. Like, that's probably my favorite one person to deal with. So, but mine's the venturer. So,
nice. That's a good.
But it's certainly, those are the ones you send into the burning buildings. Like, save the babies. But they always have to have something exciting going on. And so, I'm sure that you feel the same way. You always need a little bit of excitement. So,
yeah, I do. But yeah, sometimes I feel like there's too much excitement. But then when things get boring, I get bored again, and I'm like, "What? We got to get some excitement going on here. Let's chase something new."
Yeah, absolutely. Never a dull moment. Like, we're always seeing different. We see a lot of the same situations that people can create for themselves, but also, different industries, different circumstances. There's a lot of things that you see repetitive as far as problems that are self-created, but there's a lot of problems that are great problems to be solving.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially when you're talking about the multi-generational businesses. We work with some of those kind of companies on the marketing side of things. And, I always like to say, every rock you turn over, you find another scorpion.
Yeah, it's well, the thing that we see is not necessarily second generation, but the third is the one you got to watch very closely. Like, they're a little bit removed from the what built it, and so that's the hardest one to transition to.
Well, let me ask you this: what do you know now that you wish you had known on day one in your current role at vcfo?
To learn how to build and develop a market. Because when I originally came in, I thought it was more sales and selling and dealing with the problems head on. And yes, there are those elements in the role, but the thing that it was probably one of my, and you may know him. His name is Michael Landers here in town. He's with the managing partner over at UHY in Houston. And I was having lunch with him one day, and we were kind of talking about it, because I was kind of like, he's an accountant and I'm an accountant, and I'm having to learn how to build and develop a market and sell. And he's like, well, you want to know the first sales lesson? And I said, well, yeah, tell me. He's like, don't sell. And I was kind of like, what? He's like, yeah, don't sell. Just focus on the relationships, focus on, being there to solve the problems, but don't try to push square pegs and round holes. Don't try to sell every chance you get. Just be part of the brand, be there, be present, and work in the market, on focusing on developing your relationships.
Yeah.
That's some of the best advice I got, as far as I've learned a lot about branding, sales, and marketing, especially from people like yourself, or people that are in the know, and I can take some of the elements of branding, marketing, and selling, and be able to apply it to what we do, because we're accountants. We're accounting consultants. We're not. That's not what we set out to be in our careers, sales and marketing, and we're more like, we want to get into the granular type issues, and sometimes that's not very productive.
Man, I can echo that part about not selling, to be a good business development person, because especially in the professional development space, I think if you're selling widgets, you can really get out there, put the hard pitch on people about things. But when you're doing professional services, you can really come off having commission breath, and it's like, oh God, here comes Richard again. He's after my wallet. It's like, that right now just crushes relationships. But I think if you're out there, because when I first got into sales, my boss was like, hey, I want you to do business development for me. I was like, that's selling? And he's like, well, yeah, kind of. And I was like, I'm not a sales guy. I can't do that. It's not my jam. And he was like, no, listen, you never be a stranger. I was like, that's true. Yeah, I make friends at the grocery store. Yeah. And then he's like, well, and you like how people solve problems, marketing problems that we can solve here. I was like, yeah, of course. That's what I love to do. That's why I jam. He's like, that's all I want you to do.
Yeah.
Go and talk to people and if they have a problem that we can help them solve. Tell them how we can help them solve it. Start consulting with them, and then we'll see where it goes.
Okay.
And I was like, I guess I could do that. It turns out that's a pretty good formula for business development, professional services.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like that was like my first skiing lesson when I was growing up, like water skiing. My dad tossed me in the water and said, when you're up, you're up.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, I guess, when you're doing professional services, and you guys are talking directly with CEOs of these kind of lower middle market clients, what would you say the biggest obstacles you face from a sales and marketing perspective?
There's several of them that and really like the bigger companies. I'll have two different examples. One is the bigger companies. One of the bigger companies is like they have resources and like, let's say 50 million plus in revenues. They may even have a CFO, and a lot of times they do. And they have the resources, they have a team, and they're not getting, sometimes they're not getting their day job done, but they're also not getting the strategic initiatives done. And so it may have the willpower behind it to have the CEO say, hey, we need to really get some help, but you got to get the buy-in from the rest of the team. And that's when, unless it's done right, if the CEO marches us into the office, it's like, hey, Mr. CFO, meet your counterpart, vcfo, and they're going to come help you. It's like a wall immediately, like up.
Yeah. I always say, that happens with us too. And I always say it's like white blood cells attack the foreign invader.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's a hard problem to solve. I gotta like, if I detect that I'm in that situation, because it's happened enough, I stop and I say, hey, no, I need you to, if you're going to introduce me this way. And it's more of like, we add bandwidth, and we're here for a short time, and we're here to get over the hump, and they can focus on their day job, and we'll do these all other ancillary things. We'll swim in our lanes, and we'll even answer to the CFO, but I really spend a lot of time trying to get that problem solved. Because if they're not throwing an oar in the water, we can't reach our objectives. If they feel threatened,
for sure.
Unless I have a project that's completely separate from everybody else and everything else, then like a merger integration or something like that, or ERP systems and things like that are examples of it has to take the whole team. So.
Yeah, for sure. What do you mean? You don't like people looking over your shoulder telling you you're doing a terrible job?
Well, no, I don't mind it so much anymore, but I mean, our people are trained not to. That's not an issue, but it takes a lot of training, and it takes some years too. Especially
absolutely,
we have to have it like through every step at VCFO, where we have quality control people looking over the shoulder, see what the quality output is.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things of being a fractional executive, whether you're a CFO or CMO or COO or whatever it is, you're getting parachuted into a totally different terrain every time. you're never going to understand their business as well as they understand it. They've been working it for 20 years or whatever, and you're the new guy that has to come in and figure out the lay of the land really quickly. And without support from the staff members that really do know where the bodies are buried and the history and all those things, you're not going to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that is one of the things where the personality sometimes trumps the industry experience, and that's one of the things. Like when I am talking with the CEO, and I'm like, hey, this is a pretty hairy situation, and cash is against the wall. The best CFO may not be the one with the industry experience. It may be the maverick, and I just so happens I've got one here in Houston and one in Denver, and I think this is the better CFO. We can swap them out later, but right now, your feet are against the fire, and we need to get you to a safe place. And that's where the personality will trump the experience. So,
yeah, that we see that too. I think that whenever we're working on things, people are always like, I need people with, X industry experience. And I think that can help you, but also it can hurt you sometimes because, I think if that's all they know, they're not going to pull from these other industries, and they're not going to say, well, look, it's the way they do it in this industry is like this, and they'll learn a few tricks from them. Why don't we bring that to your industry? Because I think it's applicable here. You're just going to get the same people doing the same things over and over. And that's not, if you're in a turnaround situation, it's definitely not what you want to do.
Well, the other one that they do is like, they want to have somebody that has their exact system experience. And so, like, let's say that, like, we must have somebody with Sage Intact experience. Kind of like, well, that's kind of like saying you must have a contractor that has this particular hammer. It's just a tool, So you're limiting the pool of talent, and the talent is the one thing that gets you through from point A to point B. If you say, like, if they say the three things, I must have this industry experience, I must have this with this tool, whatever software it is, and they must be in Houston, Texas. Well, that limits my pool of candidates, like
sure,
people to solve their problem, like down to like one, if any, So
yeah, it's like going to the website and you're like, okay, I want it, or you're looking for a car online, or it's like, it has to have this many miles, it has to be this engine set, it has to be this, and then it has to be this color, and by the time you get there, you're like, there's no cars available.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, well, loosen these configurations a little bit and see if we can find what we're looking for.
Yeah, and I mentioned that I would have another example of the lower end of the low middle market, and that problem relates back to what I was talking about earlier, where the CEO and the owner doesn't necessarily know what a CFO can bring to the table, because they've had that person that lives in the box that knows the system the best, and they don't know what a CFO can bring, or the difference between a controller and a CFO. And so that's the harder problem at the lower end of the middle market to solve. And so it's a little bit different than what I was talking about earlier, where walking in and being a bandwidth supplement to the team versus being the team.
Yeah. You got to come in and own it.
Right. And it takes different personalities in both of those situations. So,
yeah, you want a steady Eddie in that situation.
Yeah, exactly.
No Maverick for that one. House out of fire.
Yeah, it's usually like a captain or director or something in that category. But yeah,
that's cool. Where do you see your industry going in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think that AI is going to play a big role, and especially in the back office.
Yeah.
I don't think that it will eliminate the role of the CFO. The CFO will be a tool that the CFO uses, and potentially the controller level. But on the lower end of, let's say, AP, AR, some of the tasks that are more routine, more in the box, more almost programmable, I think that's you're going to see a lot of replacement over the next 5 years in that area. And so the bookkeeper, I can't say that they'll struggle, but the ones that focus more on the lower end are going to have a harder time with their value proposition as time marches on. So,
yeah, how do you see that playing out? You think that companies are going to build agents to do that work, or do you think it's going to come built into the software? I know we use Zero, and they're keep adding all this AI functionality, and it's like you said, it's really attacking all the monotonous, and there's a lot of activity, and it's the same thing over and over and over again. And Zero learns it. It's like it automatically codes things to the right GL. There's not a lot of hand work that needs to be done in there.
Right. Agents and bots building bots. So like you can start identifying repetitive processes, and it'll start with the repetitive, but then as you move up the chain, there will be a lot of decision making, but you're going to have somebody along the way that double checks to make sure that it's classified properly, timely, accurately, especially when you have, like, let's say accounting entries may be, it's not just a journal entry. Sometimes you have, let's just say like something simple, like a loan. Like you have a loan and you're paying interest on it. There's an interest expense and there's a principal component. That's pretty easy right now. But like there's other entries that go in that are, multi-level entries that might be affected now, might have a balance sheet effect and a P&L effect and certainly cash effect. There's some very complicated things that happen along the way, but the simple stuff, that's what's going to get eliminated first. And as you move up the chain, they might be able to get a little bit more complex, but somebody needs to be double checking that knows exactly how things go together. And the only way you know exactly how things go together is unless you've actually done it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's right. I feel like that's the way it is across industries. I was thinking about it with, how it's going to affect medicine. I think that AI is going to improve healthcare a lot. In fact, I saw a study that Microsoft built this medical bot that actually was more accurate than the doctor in its diagnosis, but also had better bedside manner. And it's like, well, that's interesting, but I still want a doctor looking at those results and talking to me about it. I think that I want somebody's got to investigate the findings and go, hey, this is accurate. I think this is, truly what's going on. And that's, I think it's that way with everything. Before my taxes get filed, I want my CPA I don't want that to just be, Chat GPT doing that. This stuff I could go to jail for. I want the CPA to leave that inside it, please.
Yeah, and then well, that's really interesting. I hadn't really put a lot of thought into the personality, but I should have, since I've been talking about it a lot. But I don't know if you've ever dealt with someone that's in the box and kind of poking them to move outside the box. They get pretty persnickety. They won't do that. Okay. So,
I think we're different from a lot of other marketing firms, and we really embed with the sales team, and we turn into marketing and ops operations, or a revenue ops situation where marketing and sales are working hand to hand to get deals across the line and get new deals in the pipeline and all that. But one thing we noticed is salespeople and marketing people really fall back into muscle memory when times get tough. And so there needs to be an element of change management in there, because if you don't, soon as, you have a bad quarter or whatever, like you're always going to do, or you're in danger of getting, missing quota or whatever, people panic and, they want to undo the whole process. No, trust the process. Let it keep going.
It's really important. Not only like trusting the process, but knowing what drives value. Like, so this is across the board, like where sales, marketing, strategy, and accounting and finance all kind of meet together in like really designing. I'm sure you do this with your clients, designing KPIs, like activities that drive the value of the brand, or activities that drive in a certain direction. And the important part is being able to measure those things. And like, for example, like before I even knew much about sales and marketing, as a CFO, that when sales were down and something like that would happen, he's like, he'd get out and like the CEO would come out of his office and he'd like go over to the sales team and say, email more, sell harder. And I'm sitting there watching him like, I'm not so sure that that's the right strategy, but I mean, who am I to know? I'm just the CFO. I was like, I wish I knew how to do it. And then now, I feel like I have a much better idea, like as far as like understanding what drives those sales and what truly, like on, let's say the finance and accounting side, what drives value, and having people focus on those and trusting that process and doing the things that will yield results, because it could result in, like, for example, I call that the Titanic syndrome. It's like you hit the iceberg, the ship is sinking, and invariably there's somebody that wants to rearrange all the deck chairs.
Yeah.
They just run around looking busy, and the ship's sinking. Unless you're like focused on, okay, this is how you get out of this mess, and these are the things you need to do, and you have it where you're measuring it and watching it, then you're not going to get the result you want. So.
That's right. What is it? What you measure, you can improve. You're not measuring it. You're not going to improve it. If you do, it's just, cotton lining in a jar or whatever. I wouldn't bet on that happening too often.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as you think about the from a business development perspective, what tactics are you seeing out there that you're most excited about really, help you in your role?
Well, one of the things that really drives business for us is a vast majority of all of our business comes in, it's referral. We've really improved our online presence and SEO and things like that, but it might have been 5% when it started, and it might be 10%, might be online leads. And even when we get an online lead, sometimes they're just not a good fit. Like they're out there shopping and they've got 5 other firms that are talking about nationwide. Whereas when we have a warm lead and a partner that's already vetted them, they know that somebody that would work well with us, and they're already working well with them. That type of relationship transfers over to us, and I can close it and make it work faster and more efficiently, because the people around the table all have a vested interest in making sure that we're all on the same page. And so one of the things that I do pay a lot of attention to is our partner networks. And so one of the things that we've been doing here in Houston, and we've been doing it quite a bit in the other markets as well, but we set up something called a partner pitch day. And the objective is the people that we work with don't always know each other. And so we want to make sure that our partners are, our partners are their partners. And so there are things that we don't do that a lot of our partners do, that we're all catering to the same middle market. And we try to sit down and truly understand what our partners do. And we do it in about 3-hour format. We go through and say, what's the value proposition? Maybe a little bit of background, value proposition, what makes a good lead, what makes a bad lead for us. And when one partner walks in, there's 3 other partners that are sitting around the table. Not only do they get to share what they do and what makes a good lead for them, but they also get to learn 3 other partners. And then our CFOs are sitting around the table, plus high-level vcfo people. So it's a lot of exposure in a little bit of time, but it's an intimate type setting where you can truly discuss case study, or examples of work that you've done. And it really helps as far as being able to generate business, not only for us, but for our partners as well. So
I love that. I've been fortunate enough to be invited to one of those, and I can tell you guys do a first-class job, and it really is interesting to see. I think what I see is you created a great community around that. And like you said there, everybody's serving the same types of clients, and but everybody does something a little different. And so really interesting to be able to meet those people because like you said, whenever you're out and you're trying to meet people and help them solve problems, well, sometimes they have problems that I can't help them solve a lot of times, right? And so, but it's really great to be able to say, well, look, I have let me introduce you to somebody. And that network's been a really wonderful place for me to meet people to do that. So it's been really good. And I think you're on the right track, because that's something we see a lot with professional services. Referrals are always going to be the deals that are the right size deals, the right type of deals, and deals that you can close in a hurry. Like, because when you get a warm introduction like that to a professional services firm, there's this trust level that comes right in that you don't have to build up over months. It's like, oh, my lawyer recommended I talk to these guys. I should probably talk to them. All right. Or my CFO said, talk to these guys. Well, they're the money guy. They know. Well, I guess I'll talk to them.
Yeah.
So it's really good.
Yeah, no, we've truly enjoyed it. Really, how it started off, I was trying to get some of our partners here in Houston plugged into our other markets. And I was like, let's have a partner pitch day and like do an online type venue where I have partners from our other markets go meet the other people in Austin, and trying to get everybody's schedules and trying to get them interested in that was an uphill battle. But then one of the managing directors in Austin took it a little bit different direction and said, well, why don't we just have a meeting amongst ourselves in an environment each market can control. And that's where it kind of took off, in person, not online, where you can look each other in the eye and really get to know people. So,
yeah. What would you say is the biggest biz dev lesson you've learned in your career?
Well, it certainly would lend itself to the don't sell. Like, it's all about the relationship, and never forget that. Everything has to reinforce the relationship. So, like, for example, being genuine, authentic, and a problem solver. It's a lot of that's what vcfo does. I mean, we're not gonna promise something that we can't do, but like, for example, we have some entities that come in and say, well, can you help me fundraise? And I'm like, well, we can certainly help you fundraise, but we can't go and introduce you to, like an investment banker would. And that's not our bag, but we can do all the support behind that. And so starting off early, anything with finance might be like, yes, we can do that. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
How can we help you? And it's like, you got to really know what you do and be authentic on what you can solve and what you can't. And then what you can't, you make sure to refer out to other service providers.
I love that. I had a mentor. He said, look, you can't say your target audience is people with a pulse that might have money.
That's actually like a great, not every person you talk to is going to be a client, but every person will know somebody that might be a client. So
not
everybody's
absolutely
going to fit.
Perfect. Yeah. And having the maturity to recognize that right off and go, well, this is not I don't think we're the right fit for you. And, or you might not be the right fit for us. Being able to go out there and take a deal that is just, a dog with fleas, and it's just, you'll stay away from, being able to stay away from it requires a lot of discipline,
Yeah. I think that reminds me. So rarely do I lose to like a competitive firm, like a firm that does something similar to fractional CFOs. Like, we've been in the space and the pioneer in the space, so I've gotten the privilege to learn like how the business has evolved, and like it's not like we've been doing it for 30 years and I get to learn from the experience. But a lot of times what we call single shingle, like somebody that might come in and say, well, I'll do it for this rate, and I'll be your everything, your controller, CFO, and in kind of the end all be all. And then so that in that CEO's mind, they're taking a cheaper option. Like, oh, this is going to be so much cheaper. And now when I'm against that, before I'd like think about like, how do we cut prices and cut this corner, get this corner to be able to make this fit and work for them. Now I'm like, you know what? I'm happy. That's a great solution. And I tell you what, usually when we have this conversation, like 6 months later, it results in an engagement because we've been there, done that, and I've seen it happen where the cheapest option isn't always the best one. But right now, this is the best solution for you, and I wish you the best. I'm going to check in, and it's like a very happy party. Well, the thing that I've learned is I'd rather them go if that's what if price is the only option. I'd rather them go and like go and do that, because otherwise I'm going to be fighting with the pricing and the billing for the whole rest of the time, and you focus on that, not their actual problems. And then we're like trying to limit the controller, the CFO's time to where it's a big trade-off between, are they getting what they need? I'd rather them go and try to figure out, hey, the cheapest option is not always the best, and then come back. That ends up in a much better relationship down the road. So it's more like, also like when M&A and deal terms and things like that, where I'm dealing with other companies and players around the table, I want the other side to have experience, but I want them to have experience in having their teeth kicked in. You know, like what makes a bad deal, like what makes them blow up, and the authenticity and the drive towards a deal is very different when you have, and very different when you have like a business owner that has had experience with what doesn't work. And so that perspective on the business development end is critical, because trying to go and sell or move or create an engagement where you're forcing a square peg in a round hole is just, it can be gut wrenching on the back end. So
there's a lot of deals that you wish that you think, oh yeah, this is great, you know, we won this deal, and then you get it and you go, oh man, now we see why the last marketing firm left and resigned this account. Oh man. And we see that too with single shingle operators, right? Because, and I bet it's like that in Europe. Well, until they get anybody in our business even call himself a CMO, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they have 3 years of experience as a junior person in a company. In fact, we decided an intern that he's still in college, and he says it's his CMO for his friend's moving company. And I'm like, okay, yeah, so really anybody could be a CMO. And so I thought that was funny. And, but you know, one separates a marketing person from a CMO is quite different. You know, like you said earlier, being able to have those conversations with the executives, being able to, you know, have a little gray hair and scar tissue and know what works and what doesn't work, and what different industries, you know, look like, and what different target audiences, how they respond. Mm-hmm. All those things, you know, just requires experience. And in your world, you said it's a very big difference between a controller and a CFO. What do you see when you're up against those single shingles? How many of them can really do it all?
Well, it's really tough. Like, especially, so there's a big nuance. Like, for example, I spent some time, especially on the lower middle market, and when I know a single shingle is involved, I start making sure that they understand and know and highlight the questions they need to ask. For example, if they have a single shingle come in, and let's say their rate is $225, $250 an hour, but they're going to do all of the CFO work and controller work, and basically there's only one person doing all of that. If for us, we have assistant controllers, CFOs, we have a whole stack of different levels of experience in there. And we try to make sure that, you know, somebody that's doing the reconciliations and the journal entries is on, you know, assistant controller level type person, at most a controller, where the rate's lower and the mindset is different. But if you have a single shingle and they're doing all of it, they got to go and live in the box, be in the box, and then every once in a while get outside the box. And that's very hard to do. And then also there's something that business model lends itself to, because I've actually done this. I know this part of it, of being out on my own, where I came out in 2010 and started to do fractional CFO work, is they're paying the same rate regardless of whether you're doing reconciliations
Yeah.
versus that. But also that person in that role still needs other clients. And so it's an eat what you kill business model. So you're going to have to go out and not only do the work, but you got to go out and you got to do the business development end of it. You got to go sign them up. You got to do the relationship management of it. And then you got to be outside the box for the client. And then you have to be inside the box for the client. And then you have like 4 or 5 of them, and constantly they're always rotating through. It's a very difficult road to hoe. It takes a very special person, and at the same time, you'll end up paying a higher rate. Like the potential client will end up paying a higher net rate because they're paying somebody to reconcile the books, plus close the books, plus do your CFO law. And so it's a little bit of a thought process to see it, but once somebody sees it, they can't see it. So
yeah, well, not all CEOs are as adept at finance as a CFO, but I think they can all recognize a $250 an hour person doing $20 an hour work.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out in their favor.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's part of the lower middle market. You see that very common. That's a common problem.
What would you say what do we not talk about that we should have talked about?
I think that one of the things that we haven't really discussed is the role of strategy, and it really converges on a lot of what you do, and then what a lot of the CFO and the CEO combined does, and it takes all of the above to really converge on strategy. Like my favorite one to talk about is the blue ocean strategy, and I probably brought it up to you, maybe even giving you a book over time. If I haven't, I will.
It's a classic.
Yeah,
one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite strategy book that I've ever been part of or read. But I mean, it's really looking at how you can tailor your value proposition to the market in order to create uncontested market space. And so this is why it's so critically important that the CFO and the CEO and like the CMO and exactly what you do converges into a singular mindset on how do you settle on a strategy that wins. So, and you would think that would be, it's a very difficult proposition to put together, but once it's put together and you have a cohesive strategy that works, when you look back at it, kind of like, it's so simple. It's not so simple to do, like when you're in the thick of it, trying to formulate it, because you get in a box. And I know that's one of the specialties that you have, is getting people outside the box and thinking through their strategy. But the CFO is the one that's saying, what if, and what does that impact us? How does it impact us financially? And what does it mean for us as far as, I mean, how much capital do we need to explore this, or how much runway do we need to go down X path versus Y path? It's just, it really is a part of the team that not a lot goes into it on the front end. Like when an early stage company, like they might do it on like VC level stuff, but for the average company here in Houston, Texas, they've never heard of Ocean strategy. They just found their niche and they've stuck with it, and they hit a wall and they're like, well, what did we do? And they realize there's a vast universe of help that's out there, but it really comes down to how cohesive those 3 elements are in putting oars in the water to develop that strategy and make it to where it's a defensible, uncontested market space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think and those are getting harder and harder to come by. And as you mentioned, so we'll do that for a client, and they're like, what? You trying to sell my money just for these 3 things? That's look really simple. Like, it'll take months to get to that simplicity. And I think people sometimes want to jump to the simplicity without going through the complexity, and then it's just junk, right? It's just it lacks any substance when you just go, let's just do that or steal these guys, and it's not authentic to you. And so you're not gonna get far with it.
Yeah. And you can, I mean, the funny thing is that you can apply that strategy to almost any industry. Like Buc-ee's did it to gas stations. The Savannah Bananas doing it to like minor league baseball.
Yeah.
Like when you learn it and you see it, you can't unsee it. And it's like a really fascinating area to be operating in. So I really commend you on some of the things that you do to help clients see that light.
Well, thanks for that. And I like that you guys like to the financial world, because nothing in the marketing world's gonna move without any money behind it.
Yeah.
It's like I could build them a great PowerPoint, but if they can't scrape up budget for their marketing, then it's just gonna live in their heads, right? You gotta bring it to the market, and that requires money.
Right.
And smart finance people can look at that and go, yeah, well, what is the cost of this customer acquisition gonna be? And look at it and go, well, all right, it's gonna cost us $200 to get a $2 million client. The math works. Let's go.
Yeah. And
so
the other thing is like, there's really only 4 levers at the end of the day you can pull for getting money to do whatever you want to do. It's increase revenues, decrease costs, equity or debt. And so the most expensive one is going to be the equity piece. Like if you can develop a strategy that on the revenue side, that the costs are at or below what you were typically doing, then that's probably going to be the cheapest area. And so a lot of times you can reduce expenses, but make sure you're not reducing your production capacity or hurting your company to not having enough resources to deliver that strategy.
Oh man, yeah. You can. Earlier in my career, we kind of outkick the coverage, to borrow a sports analogy, where we generated a lot more demand than the company could actually fulfill. And that is the worst thing you can do as a marketer. That is the absolute worst, because you just paid a bunch of money to aggravate a lot of customers, and it was terrible. That's like one of the first questions we do in our discovery. And I was like, well, okay, look, if we didn't increase, because everybody comes to us and they're like, hey, we want to increase our revenue by 30% year on year for the next 5 years. We want to be a $100 million company and all that. And then when you start asking us questions, all right, well, we did grow 30%. Can you deliver on that? And then they haven't thought about that question a lot of times. Why is the marketing guy asking me this question? And I look over in the corner and I see the CFO going,
Yeah, I've been on that end of
I love it. Well, this has been a great conversation. And where can our audience find you? They want to reach out and get a great fractional CFO.
Okay, so the main web address is vcfo.com. It's very simple. My email address is just dwilliamson at vcfo.com. You're welcome to contact me there. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. I believe it's just Dustin Williamson. There's no numbers. I was fortunate enough to sign up like pretty early on in LinkedIn's history, so it's pretty simple to find me. And so more than happy to talk through any problems you have, or if it's things that we can't solve. I generally know who can. So
yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Dustin.
Well, thank you for having me. It's such an honor, and I really enjoyed talking with you today.
It's always great talking to you, Dustin.
That's a wrap on today's episode. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing, sharing, or spreading the news about us on your favorite channel. Thank you for tuning into Above the Clouds, Stories from the Boardroom. Until next time, stay above the clouds.